Sometimes a new energy policy gets its own dedicated bill, debated and voted on as a standalone idea. It gets a catchy name, its own press conference, and a very focused committee hearing. And sometimes it gets loaded onto an aircraft carrier.
That's exactly how Connecticut Representative Jonathan Steinberg described his state's approach to plug-in solar. Connecticut has a very short legislative session, so when lawmakers wanted to move on plug-in solar, they didn't write a standalone bill. They folded it into a massive multi-part renewable energy package that covered everything from agrivoltaics to environmental justice to energy storage. It was a massive piece of legislation designed to carry as much as possible across the finish line.
But even buried inside that massive package, the plug-in solar provisions became one of the most talked about parts of the bill. Why? Because Connecticut has some of the highest electricity rates in the country, and residents are desperate for a way to fight back. When you're paying over 30 cents a kilowatt hour, you stop caring about abstract policy and start looking for immediate, practical relief.
Today, we're going behind the bill in Connecticut. We'll look at how they balanced consumer access with strict safety requirements, the ongoing challenge of utility metering, and the crucial role of grid reliability. We're going to hear from two different lawmakers, Representative Steinberg, who saw it as a populist affordability tool, and Representative Stephen Winter, who saw it as a way to slash the soft costs that make American solar so expensive.
Welcome to Plug-in Solar Explained from Plug-in Solar US. I'm Lisa. Each episode, we break down the policies, products, standards, and state-by-state changes shaping the future of plug-in solar in America. Whether you're a renter looking for your first panel or a homeowner trying to make sense of the new safety rules, this is the simple way to understand America's next consumer energy movement.
And I'm Mike. Today's episode is part of our Behind the Bill series, where we look at the story behind every state law changing plug-in solar in America. We don't just read the final text, we talk to the people who wrote it. Today, we're looking at Connecticut's HB 5340, which became Public Act 26-127. This is a story about frustration, pragmatism, and recognizing that the energy transition has to include the people who can't afford a $20,000 rooftop system.
Let's start with the basics. Before we get into the politics and the backstory, what did Connecticut's HB 5340 actually do for plug-in solar? If I'm a resident of Connecticut, what changed for me?
The bill created a specific, legally protected category for these devices. It defines a portable solar generation device using 4 specific criteria. First, it has to be a system that is not permanently affixed to a structure. Second, it has a maximum output of 1,200 watts. Third, it connects behind the meter through a standard 120-volt outlet. And fourth, it is primarily intended to offset the customer's own electricity use.
Let's break those down. Not permanently affixed means we aren't talking about lag bolting panels into your roof rafters. We're talking about a temporary, movable setup. Maybe it's on a balcony stand or a patio mount or a weighted frame in the backyard.
Exactly. And the 1,200 watt cap is critical. We've seen that number in other states too. 1,200 watts is small. It's the equivalent of maybe 3 or 4 standard panels. It's not going to run your central air conditioning, but it's enough to offset your baseline vampire load, your refrigerator, your Wi-Fi router, things that run all day.
And if a system meets all 4 of those criteria?
If it meets that definition, and crucially, if it meets specific safety and certification requirements, which we'll get into, the device is exempt from the standard interconnection agreement requirements imposed by the Public Utilities Regulation Agreement, or PURA. You're allowed 1 device per meter.
So it's similar to what we saw in Utah and New Hampshire. They set a 1,200 watt cap and exempted these small systems from the heavy bureaucracy of traditional rooftop solar.
Exactly. But Connecticut was very explicit about the safety conditions. They didn't just wave these through. The device has to meet state building codes, the National Electrical Code, IEEE 1547 grid interconnection standards, and it must be certified by Underwriters Laboratories or an equivalent testing lab. It also explicitly requires a feature that prevents the system from energizing the building's electrical system during a power outage.
That's a lot of technical acronyms, but the takeaway is clear. Connecticut said yes to plug-in solar, but only if it meets the highest possible safety standards. They aren't lowering the bar. They're just creating a different door to walk through.
Right. In plain English, Connecticut created a legal pathway for small plug-in solar devices, but only under defined safety, code, grid reliability, and consumer protection conditions. That balance reflects the core message from both Representative Steinberg and Representative Winter.
Let's talk about how this bill actually came to be. Where did the idea for plug-in solar in Connecticut actually originate?
It came from a few different places. Representative Steinberg said plug-in solar had become a popular discussion point largely because of media coverage and examples from Germany, where small balcony and portable solar systems have become incredibly common. People were seeing it work overseas and asking, why can't we do that here?
And Representative Winter had a different entry point, right?
He did. Winter first encountered the issue at a statewide clean energy event in Hartford. Bill McKibben, the well-known environmentalist, joined the event by Zoom and specifically highlighted plug-in solar and automated permitting as two technologies worth fast-tracking. Both of those ideas eventually became part of Connecticut's broader HB 5340 package.
That pairing, automated permitting and plug-in solar, is really interesting.
It is. And Winter pointed that out. Automated permitting reduces the friction for conventional solar projects. Plug-in solar points toward an even lower friction category, a small behind-the-meter product designed to offset electricity use without the massive interconnection burden of a full rooftop system. Winter had long been interested in why U.S. solar costs haven't fallen as dramatically as in other countries, and both of these ideas spoke directly to that concern.
So how did it actually get passed? You mentioned the aircraft carrier analogy in the cold open.
Right. Steinberg was very candid about this. He said an omnibus bill wasn't his preferred approach, but Connecticut's short legislative calendar made it practical. They had a lot of competing energy priorities this session, so they packed it all into one massive package called an Act Concerning Renewable Power Generation.
And plug-in solar was just one piece of that massive package.
A very small piece of a very big bill. But here's what's fascinating. It became one of the most popular pieces. Steinberg noted that it had remarkable bipartisan appeal. While other parts of the broader energy package were politically divided, as energy bills often are, plug-in solar brought people together. He said it was remarkable how many people, really from both sides of the aisle, were excited by the prospect.
Why did it resonate so strongly across the aisle? Usually anything touching renewable energy immediately falls into partisan camps. You've got one side talking about climate goals and the other side talking about costs.
2 words: electricity bills. Connecticut has some of the highest residential electricity rates in the continental U.S. In 2025, consumers spent an average of nearly $2,500 annually on electricity. That's about $700 more than the national average. When people are paying 30 cents a kilowatt hour, they are frustrated and they feel powerless. Steinberg called plug-in solar a populist answer to that frustration.
Populist is an interesting word choice for a solar panel. Usually we hear words like innovative or green.
It is, but it makes sense when you think about it. It gives ordinary people a way to fight back. It won't eliminate your electricity bill. It won't replace a full rooftop solar system, but it lets people take a small, visible step toward producing some of their own electricity. Steinberg said the appeal came from the idea that people could reassert control and not feel powerless in the face of rising energy costs.
And Representative Winter looked at it from an economic efficiency standpoint, right? The soft costs argument?
Exactly. Winter's interview adds a really important theme to Connecticut's story: soft cost reduction. In solar, soft costs include permitting, interconnection, customer acquisition, financing, and inspection. Even as the actual hardware prices fall, these soft costs keep U.S. solar incredibly expensive.
You can buy the panels cheaply, but getting permission to turn them on costs a fortune. Right. And that's why Winter connected plug-in solar to automated permitting. He said the beauty of plug-in systems is there is no interconnection. Even if a specialized plug or a small building permit is needed in the near term, Winter said the soft costs are dramatically lower than conventional solar. If the same concept can eventually expand into larger systems or plug-in battery storage, it could become even more interesting. It's a strategy to make distributed energy easier, cheaper, and more accessible. That access piece is huge, and it's something we talk about a lot on this show. Traditional solar leaves out a massive chunk of the population.
Right. If you rent an apartment, live in a condo, have a heavily shaded roof, or just don't have $20,000 or $30,000 in upfront capital, traditional solar is completely off the table for you. You're locked out of the transition. Plug-in solar changes that math.
And in a state like Connecticut, that's a lot of people. There are hundreds of thousands of renter households in the state.
Exactly. One of the most compelling arguments for plug-in solar during the legislative debate was that it could help people who are left out of traditional rooftop solar. Steinberg said the original concept was to make plug-in solar as broadly available as possible.
But Representative Winter was careful to distinguish between who benefits right now versus who benefits 5 years from now, wasn't he?
Yes, he was very realistic about this. In the near term, he expects homeowners and other property owners may be best positioned to benefit because current UL-related pathways might still require a specialized plug or an installation component. For now, he said, the category may not be a true plug-and-play product for every single resident.
So if you're a renter, you might not be able to just buy a box at Home Depot and plug it into a standard wall outlet tomorrow. You might need your landlord to approve a specialized outlet installation first.
Exactly. But longer term, Winter sees major promise for renters and urban residents if standards and certifications evolve toward ordinary outlet use. A renter with a balcony, backyard, or other suitable space could eventually have a practical way to participate in clean energy without owning a roof.
Which makes Connecticut's access story realistic rather than simplistic. Let's talk about safety, because it sounds like Connecticut leaned heavily into that. They didn't just open the floodgates.
They absolutely did not. Steinberg repeatedly emphasized that they intentionally erred on the side of safety. That safety-first posture was shaped by several factors. First, plug-in solar is still a new category in the United States. While Germany has seen broad adoption, the U.S. electrical system, building stock, codes, utility practices, and consumer expectations are entirely different.
We operate on 120 volts, not 230 volts. We have different breaker panels, different wire gauges. You can't just copy the German rules.
Right. And Connecticut has a lot of older homes. Steinberg noted that the state has aging infrastructure across transportation, energy, housing, and other systems. That includes older homes and improvised wiring that may not be ideal for a new electrical product category. Winter echoed this concern.
So how did they address that in the bill?
By relying on UL standards and building codes, Steinberg said UL appeared to be moving toward recommending involvement from an electrician or appropriate installer, along with a separate circuit and breaker, to avoid problems with existing wiring. Connecticut's message was not buy anything and plug it in anywhere. It was, the state supports the category, but consumers should be guided by certified products, applicable codes, and proper installation.
And there was also a grid reliability component, right? ISO New England got involved?
Yes, this is a really important implementation detail that Winter brought up. He said Connecticut met with ISO New England, the regional grid operator, and received input about including language specific to inverter standards already used for conventional residential solar systems. The goal was to make sure plug-in solar systems would have the same grid reliability characteristics expected of other residential solar equipment.
That makes sense. Plug-in solar isn't just a consumer appliance like a toaster. It's a device that generates electricity and interacts with the grid.
Exactly. The bill's safety framework addresses more than just household wiring. It also attempts to ensure that devices are certified, outage-safe, and compatible with broader grid reliability expectations. Winter said these changes weren't the result of outright opposition. ISO New England just wanted explicit certainty that systems would align with existing grid reliability standards.
Which brings us to one of the biggest technical hurdles, the utility meter. This is something that catches a lot of people by surprise, and it's a huge deal in Connecticut specifically.
This is a fascinating and frustrating problem. If your plug-in solar device produces more electricity than you were using at that exact moment, the excess electricity flows back through the meter onto the grid. If you do not have the right kind of meter, that exported generation could be measured as usage, meaning you might actually be charged for the electricity you produced.
Wait, so you could generate solar power, send it to the grid, and the utility would charge you for the power you just gave them?
Exactly. It's the exact opposite of what the law intends, and it's the exact opposite of what the consumer wants. You're trying to save money, and your meter is actively penalizing you for generating clean energy.
So why didn't Connecticut just mandate that the utilities upgrade everyone's meters? If the state wants to support this, shouldn't they fix the hardware?
Cost. It always comes back to cost. Steinberg said the state discussed this issue, but they didn't simply mandate new meters for everyone. Requiring a new meter could add hundreds of dollars in cost to the installation, which completely undermines the affordability promise that makes plug-in solar attractive in the first place.
And Winter described this as a Connecticut-specific wrinkle, right?
Yes, because only some customers currently have smart meters in the state. In most cases, Winter expects small systems will generate power that is consumed on-site, especially if paired with a battery. But in edge cases, a customer with an older meter could see exported power treated as consumption.
So how did they solve it?
Instead of blocking access because of those edge cases, Connecticut added consumer disclosure language. The goal is to make sure customers understand the issue before buying or using a system. Sellers have to explain that excess generation might be charged as usage unless the customer has a compatible meter. This is a critical point for consumer education. Plug-in solar savings depend not only on the product, but also on electricity consumption patterns, meter type, system size, storage, installation, and utility rules.
One thing that stands out here is timing. UL 3700, the national safety standard for plug-in solar, is still being finalized and rolled out. The market is incredibly young. Why didn't Connecticut just wait a year or two until everything was perfectly settled?
That's a great question, and it's a choice every state legislature is facing right now. Some states are choosing to wait until standards are fully developed before acting. Connecticut chose a different path. Steinberg described the law as an enabling step rather than a full market launch. The state is not expecting instant mass adoption. Instead, it is creating a policy foundation so that when products, standards, and consumer education catch up, Connecticut residents can participate immediately.
They built the highway before the cars were off the assembly line.
Exactly. Steinberg said, "We have no expectation of any sort of widespread adoption in the near term until that's all been promulgated by UL." But lawmakers didn't want to wait until every detail was finished. They were responding to a sincere demand from residents who want more control over energy costs right now.
So the law is basically a signal to the market. It tells manufacturers, hey, we are open for business. Get your products certified.
Yes, the result is a law that says, in effect, plug-in solar is coming. Connecticut is supportive, but implementation must be safe, certified, grid-compatible, and informed. It gives manufacturers the confidence to invest in the UL certification process because they know there is a legal, addressable market waiting for them in Connecticut once they get the stamp of approval.
Where does Connecticut fit into the broader national picture? We've covered Utah and New Hampshire. Who else is doing this?
Connecticut is part of a rapidly accelerating wave. They are the 6th U.S. state to explicitly legalize plug-in solar. Utah was the first. Then we saw Maine, Virginia, Colorado, and Maryland all pass legislation. It's moving incredibly fast. But Connecticut's approach is unique because of how they integrated it into their broader energy strategy.
How so?
Unlike Utah, where the first bill focused narrowly on removing a utility contract barrier, Connecticut placed plug-in solar inside that larger renewable energy package. That reflects the state's broader energy priorities: affordability, solar deployment, storage, consumer protection, safety, environmental justice, permitting, grid reliability, and modernization.
Steinberg sees this as part of a larger ecosystem, right?
He does. He sees plug-in solar as one part of a much larger transformation in distributed energy. He pointed to rooftop solar, ground-mounted solar, solar canopies, solar shingles, solar window films, storage, peak shaving, and virtual power plants. Plug-in solar may start small, perhaps 2 or 3 panels on a balcony, but it could become an entry point into broader energy participation.
And Winter specifically mentioned the grid value of millions of these small systems.
Yes, Winter sees plug-in solar's grid value as modest, but real. Its main value is lowering household bills, he said. But at scale, it could add a small but meaningful amount of behind-the-meter solar to the regional grid during sunny midday hours in spring, summer, and fall. Germany is the example many policymakers point to. A single small device is modest, but millions of small systems can add up.
So the bill is passed, the governor signed it. What actually has to happen between now and the day a renter in Hartford can safely plug in a panel and save money?
It's a long list. Passing the law is just step one. Connecticut has created a policy pathway, but several pieces still need to come together before plug-in solar becomes practical for mainstream consumers.
Walk us through the list.
First, UL standards and product certifications need to mature. Consumers and retailers need confidence that products are safe and compliant. You can't buy a UL 3700 certified system at Home Depot today. That pipeline has to open up.
Second,
building and fire code officials need time to incorporate portable solar generation devices into state and local rules. The inspectors need to know what they are looking at. Third, utilities and regulators need to clarify metering, billing, and customer communication. We talked about the bidirectional meter issue. Pura has to figure out how to handle that practically.
what about the electricians?
That's fourth. Electricians, contractors, and installers need clear guidance on when professional installation, dedicated circuits, breakers, or other protective measures are necessary. If you call an electrician to install a dedicated circuit for a 1200-watt system, they need to know exactly what the code requires.
And finally,
consumers need practical education. What to buy, where to place it, when not to use it, how savings work, and what rules apply in rental or multifamily settings. Connecticut may also need future policy updates as the market develops, especially around batteries, meters, rental housing, and consumer protection.
which brings us to the final and maybe most critical point, education.
If there was one issue Steinberg returned to again and again in the interview, it was education. Consumers need to understand what plug-in solar can and cannot do. It is not a whole home power system. It may not work during an outage unless properly designed with appropriate equipment. It may require professional installation, a specialized plug, or a dedicated circuit. It may interact with a utility meter in ways consumers do not expect. It may not produce savings if installed incorrectly or used in the wrong setting.
If people don't understand that, they're gonna be disappointed.
Disappointed, overcharged, sold poor quality products, or exposed to unsafe installations. Steinberg said people are paying more attention to energy because their bills are high. But that does not mean they fully understand how the grid, meters, circuits, batteries, or solar generation work. That gap creates risk.
The last thing we want is to set expectations and then not be able to deliver on them. That's a direct quote from him.
Exactly. Winter agreed that market readiness is essential. He said the biggest next step is a mass-produced product that meets the relevant UL pathway and is available online or in stores. Connecticut and other states have sent a market signal. Now lawmakers are waiting to see what manufacturers and retailers produce.
What was their final message to Connecticut residents?
Asked what he would tell residents interested in plug-in solar, Steinberg's answer was supportive but cautious. He said, "It's coming. The state is supportive. People need to be patient and they need to be well informed." His advice was straightforward. Do your homework, hire a professional when needed, and buy the best certified product available once the market is ready.
And Winter?
Winter's message was similar, but focused on the promise once certified products are available. If products meet UL certification, he said, consumers can have a high degree of confidence that they will be safe and grid compatible. Because Connecticut electricity rates are high, he suggested a 3 to 4 year payback could be reasonable if U.S. product costs approach European levels. After payback, Winter described the product as a small appliance that produces essentially free, clean power.
All right, let's bring it home. What are the key takeaways from Connecticut's approach to plug-in solar?
First, plug-in solar is a populist affordability tool. In a state with massive electricity bills, averaging nearly $2,500 a year, Plug-in solar offers a way for renters and middle-income residents to take some control over their energy costs. That promise of access gave the idea strong bipartisan appeal, even when wrapped in a larger, more controversial energy package.
Second, safety and certification are non-negotiable. Connecticut created a legal pathway, but it is strictly gated behind UL certification, electrical codes, inverter certification, and anti-ice link protections. They are welcoming the technology, but they are absolutely not lowering the safety bar. And third, you don't have to wait for perfection to pass a law. Connecticut recognized that metering issues, specialized plug requirements, and multifamily building rules still need work, and that UL standards are still evolving. But by passing the law now, they've sent a clear signal to the market and ensured their state is ready the moment the products and standards mature. That's it for our look behind Connecticut's HB 5340. If you want to read the full article and our interviews with Representative Steinberg and Representative Winter, you can find it linked in the show notes.
Next time, we'll be looking at another state that's tackling the plug-in solar transition, exploring the unique political and technical hurdles they had to overcome.
Until then, Plug-in Solar Explained is the simple way to understand plug-in solar, home energy, and the policies shaping America's next consumer energy movement.
Learn more at pluginsolarus.com. Plug-in Solar US is an educational resource. Rules, codes, utility requirements, and product certifications can change, so always check current local requirements and use properly certified products.